Hey guys, so today I've got another NHL Mock Draft. This is my NHL Mock Draft 4.0. I haven't done one in 2 months, so I have an updated one here, and we've got a new number 1 overall picking team here with the Buffalo Sabres after their historic losing drought. Ottawa's now at 2, but we have a lot of changes in this new one, so let's get straight into it. Starting off at number 1, I'm going to keep this the same here and have the Buffalo Sabres taking Brandt Clarke. I think he's the best player in this class. He has really high upside. And I think Owen Power, he has not been too great this year at all. I think he has fallen in a lot of rankings and no longer being the majority number 1, as now it's much more likely to be the field rather than Owen Power. So I have Brandt Clarke being taken here number 1 by the Sabres. They're a team that is just in need of some big changes. Hopefully they don't ruin Clarke here, as I think that he's a really good prospect, and I'd say it's pretty close between Brandt Clarke and Matthew Beniers being taken here, as I think Matthew Beniers is the safest prospect in this class. I think he will easily be a very good second line center now. I think his upside is a little questionable, but I think Buffalo's going to go with Clarke here, as he can be a really good number 1 defenseman there on the Sabres alongside Rasmus Dahlin, and that could be one of the best deep pairings in the league. I think Clarke has immense upside to be a really good offensive defenseman, and I think I'd kind of take him as one notch below a guy like Cale Makar or Bowen Byram. And next up here at number 2, we have the Ottawa Senators, and I have them taking Kent Johnson. And I think Kent Johnson has highest upside in this class. And the Senators have a lot of centers, but I think Kent Johnson will transition to the wing in the NHL, as he is the most creative offensive player in this class. And he put up really good numbers this year with the University of Michigan. He put up 27 points in 26 games, so over a point per game there. And I think he has really high potential. He can be a really good elite first liner. I think Ottawa's in a position where they can take a flyer, take a really high upside player that they can try to develop. And I think he can be a really good player to play alongside Tim Stützle and maybe even Brady Tkachuk there to form their first line of the future. And they could go for a defenseman here, but honestly, I think that they picked Jake Sanderson last year, so they're just going to go with a forward here who has the potential to be an elite winger in Kent Johnson. Moving on here, we have the Seattle Kraken, and I have been taking William Eklund. And in looking at Eklund's stats, he looks like a top 3 player. He put up 23 points in 40 games with Fisher Gardens in the SHL, playing alongside Alexander Holtz. And I just think he's a really talented player who has really high upside. And based on stats, it looks like he could go first overall, and I wouldn't discount that at all. I mean, taking first overall, but he's very good forward who can play at center or on the wing. So I think that gives him really good flexibility here, as I think Seattle will want to take future number 1 center. And though Eklund will probably be better off in the wing, and we've mostly seen him play as a winger, I think that Seattle might want to play him at center, as he will be their number 1 center in the future. Now next up here at number 4, we have the Anaheim Ducks, and I've been taking Matthew Beniers. As I said, he's the safest player in this class. They got Trevor Zegras as their number 1 center in the future, as well as Jamie Drysdale as their number 1 defenseman. So I think I'm going to bring in Beniers here. He doesn't have quite the upside as a Zegras or Drysdale, but he's a very good 2-way center who I think can be a really good 2-A center for the Ducks, and I think he will be very good behind Trevor Zegras there at the center position. As the Ducks have a ton of depth at center, but they have a lot of guys that can move around the wing. I think Beniers will be a very good 2-way player. He's very advanced defensively, and I think that he is the most NHL-ready prospect in this class. Next up at number 5, we have the Detroit Red Wings taking Jesper Wallstedt. They don't need many things. They've got Dylan Larkin as their number 1 center. We got Lucas Raymond on the wing and Philip Zadina as well. I think Larkin, Zadina, and Raymond will be a very good, one of the best first lines in the league. So I think they're going to have to go with goalie here, as they don't really have many goaltending prospects. They have the ability to take the best player in this class in general. Obviously, he's not going to go first overall because he's a goalie. He falls a bit, but he has the potential to be a franchise goalie. Some of these players are not, some people don't even consider any of these guys to be elite, but I think Wasser can be a franchise goalie. He can be one of the best goalies in the league, and he's the best goalie prospect you've seen since Carey Price. He's better than Spencer Knight and Yaroslav Iskara, who are both really, really good. So I think Detroit will have one of the best first lines in the league, and they could also have one of the best goalies. He has Vezina potential, and he's put up incredible numbers with Luleå in the SHL. Is a .908 save percentage as well as 2.23 goals against average, which is very good. He put up really good numbers. I think over a .92 save percentage in the World Juniors. And you have to remember, this guy's playing with men in the SHL. Most goalies aren't even playing in the SHL, nonetheless putting up really good numbers there. Moving on to number 6, with the New Jersey Devils, taking the Hughes brother here in Luke Hughes. I think if he is available at 6, they've got to take him. And I think this actually fits really nice. Aside from the fact that he is Jack's brother, New Jersey is in need of a #1 defenseman. I think Ty Smith is the closest thing they have, but I think that they do need some help on D, and they have the ability to get a guy who could easily go first overall here in Luke Hughes. Bring in Jack's brother. I think this has to happen. He has first pairing, if not #1 defenseman potential, and he's put up good numbers with the USN EDP U18 team. He has 34 points in 38 games as a defenseman, only 6 goals, but 28 assists, and I think that he can be a really good offensive defenseman for New Jersey, and I think him and Ty Smith could be a very good first pairing there for New Jersey. Now next up, at number 7, we have who I think is the most underrated player in this class right now, going to Columbus, and Dylan Guenther. And he has fallen a little bit for me, as before he was a top 3 guy, but I think we've seen a lot of other guys rise up the board, and I think Guenther has kind of fallen off a little bit, but he has actually had a really, really good year, putting up exactly 2 points a game, 12 goals, and 12 assists for 24 points in 12 games to the Edmonton Oil Kings in WHL. There was some concern because he wasn't actually dominating like he should in the AJHL, but I believe he is top 3 in scoring in the WHL right now, so I think they have to take him. He's a very, very good winger who I think has first-line potential on Columbus, a team that's in need of getting a future elite forward. And even though Columbus does like their international and Scandinavian players, I think they can't pass on Guenther here to be an elite forward. Now, moving on, we have the Calgary Flames, and they're gonna be very happy here to snag Owen Power, as a lot of people still have him going first overall, and even though he just slipped a bit for me, some people will be upset with this. I think that 1 to 8, even 1 to 10 is all very, very close. All these guys have first overall potential, and if somebody goes on a hot streak anywhere in this top 10, they could easily rise up the boards and be the projected first overall pick. And Owen Power has still been very good with the University of Michigan, putting up 16 points in 26 games as a defenseman. He's a very good all-around complete defenseman, probably labeled as an offensive defenseman. And I think that's something the Flames need here. Mark Giordano getting old. Noah Hannafin looks good, but not great. I think he can still be a high-level second-pairing defenseman or a lower-end first-pairing defenseman, but Owen Power, I don't know if he's going to be a #1 defenseman, but he can still be a really good defenseman for the Flames. Moving on to number 9, the Vancouver Canucks taking Simon Edvinsson. They've had a disappointing season, and I think they're going to have to take Simon Edvinsson here. Again, I think this is the best player available, a very good pick, and they are kind of in need of a defenseman. He only has 1 point, 1 assist in 10 games with Frölunda in the SHL, which is a little concerning, but Frölunda is known to produce very good players, especially defensemen, having Rasmus Dahlin. I don't think that Simon Edvinsson's a top 5 prospect, but I think he's the next best player available still for the Canucks, and they can play him as potential first-pairing defenseman for the Canucks with Quinn Hughes. Now, there is some big concerns with him, especially his decision-making and play with the puck, which I think is a major hole for him, and that could be the reason why he doesn't end up panning out in the NHL, as the NHL is now moving much more towards smaller, puck-moving, mobile defensemen, who can produce offense. And like Owen Power, Simon Edmondson is a bigger guy. But I think what makes Owen Power different is he is much more complete. He doesn't have as many holes. Simon Edmondson has just too many holes in this game. It doesn't make me have him as a top 5 prospect, but I think the Canucks will pick him up here at 9. Next up at number 10, we have the LA Kings, and after having a pretty good season, they're going to have Carson Lambos here. And I think the Kings are probably going to do worse than 10, as they're just not that great of a team. And they got Cal Peterson, who's been really good for them. But I think they're going to take another defenseman here. Drew Doughty's been good, but people have him winning the Norris, which it's not even close. I wouldn't have him in the top 10. He's been fine, but he's not even elite anymore. He's washed pretty much, and I think they need another defenseman here. They've got some good forward prospects, arguably the best prospect pool in the NHL, but I think that they do need to add another defenseman here. Lambos would instantly be their best defense prospect. Well, already got guys like Tobias Bjornfot who are good, but I think Lambos has that, will be at least a top 4 defenseman for LA. Moving on to number 11, we have one of the most underrated prospects as well in this class, similar to Dylan Gunther, a guy who's having an amazing season in Cole Sillinger. And I think he just broke the record for the Medicine Hat Tigers for points earlier today. But he has been awesome this year, and he's actually on the Sioux Falls Stampede in the USHL as a center. He's put up 45 points in 31 games. So he played for Medicine Hat last year. This year he's playing in the USHL with the CHL season being delayed, and he is not disappointed. He's one of the most creative offensive players in this class, and I think that's something that the Sharks do need. He's 6 feet tall, pretty average height, and they are a bigger team, so I think adding him can be good. I think he has really high upside, and he can be an elite player for the Sharks, and he will be at least a solid middle 6 center for them. Next up at number 12, we have the Chicago Blackhawks after having a really good season, and they're going to be taking Fabien Lysell. So far, he only has 3 points in 26 games with Luzea of the SHL. He's a right wing. He hasn't put up insane numbers, but I still think he's a really good all-around player who will be a top 15 lottery pick. And the Blackhawks are having a good year. They've got Lincoln, and I think they've got their goalie now. But they're just going to bring in Lysell, who I believe is probably the best player available at this pick. And they can bring in another winger here to maybe learn behind Patrick Kane, and he can still be at least a middle 6 winger for Chicago. Next up here at number 13, we have the Dallas Stars, and I have them taking Aatu Raty. He has fallen a little bit, but I don't think he's a top 10 pick. He just hasn't been that good this year at all, putting up only 6 points in 35 games. He really just hasn't gone on a hot streak at all. He's been not that good, and I think Sillinger, how he's playing, he's just better than Raty right now, and I think Raty does not have that good upside. Will probably just be a middle 6, second line guy at best. But I think the Stars are the ideal situation. They've got Miro Heiskanen, who's another Finn, as well as Roope Hintz, who I think could play on the line with Raty if Raty does go to the Stars. So Raty is still probably a couple years away at least, but his production just hasn't been good, and it compares to guys who were 3rd round picks last year. So even though I think Raty is still a top 15 player, I just don't think that he is a top 10 player. But the Stars are a very good situation as they're still a good team. So I think Raty will be able to get in there with some other Finns and be an impact player. Now moving on, at number 14, we have the New York Rangers. I have them taking Chaz Lucius. He's been injured a lot this year, but he has so far 18 points in 12 games, including 13 goals. So over a goal per game with the USDP. He's putting up really, really good numbers after coming back from injury, and I think he has second line center potential for the Rangers. Now with our last pick in the top 15, we have the Philadelphia Flyers, and I have them taking Xavier Bourgault, another very underrated offensive player who I think his defense does need some work, but he's still a very good offensive player who can come in for the Flyers. He's put up really good numbers so far in the QMJHL, which is really good, and I really like him. I think that he's a great player in the Schmurdian Cataract. He has 20 goals and 20 assists for 40 points in 29 games in the QMJHL, so I think it's the best player available situation. He's an underrated player, so I think he can be a really good player for the Flyers. Now, moving on here, we are now on our second part, 16 to 25. So I have the natural predators here taking Zachary Leroux. He has fallen a bit, but I think he has still put up pretty impressive numbers so far this year with that Halifax Mooseheads of the QMJHL. He's got 39 points in 32 games. He's a very good player who has top 6 center potential. Next up at 17, we have the St. Louis Blues, and I've been taking Mason McTavish. He is again a guy that has fallen, but I think is still a good player. He has 11 points in 13 games, including 9 goals with Olten in the Swiss League, and I think he has middle 6 center potential. Now, next up at 18 with the Habs, and I have been taking Oscar Olsen. He's a very, very good young forward. He's a winger. The Habs don't need more center, so I think we're going to take a winger here. He has 4 points in 16 games with HV71 of the SHL. He can play left wing and right wing, so I think he can be a good middle 6 winger. Next up here we have the Oilers, and I think this is another team that just needs to take a winger, so they're going to be taking Brennan Ottman. And he's another solid player who played in the OHL, and this year he's playing in Olten with Mason McTavish. He has 16 points in 34 games in Switzerland, and I think that he's left wing. They've got to bring in more wingers. They've got the defenseman down, and I think they found maybe even 2 first pairing defensemen, and they could have 3. They've got Darnell Nurse, who's been playing like a #1 defenseman. Tyson Berry's been a first pairing defenseman. I think Oscar Klefbom coming back and healthy could also be a first pairing defenseman. They don't need to go defense here. I think they're going to take Ottman, who can be a really good player to play with Connor McDavid or Leon Draisaitl. Now moving on at number 20 with the Boston Bruins, and I think they're going to be taking Stanislav Svozil. So he's a guy that has risen up quite a bit in the rankings. He is a defenseman playing with HC Kometa Brno in the Czech League. He has 3 points in 30 games as a defenseman, but Boston does like their European defensemen, and Europeans in general actually, but I think Svozil is a good player, put up some decent numbers. I think Boston does need to improve their defense. Now, if I were them, I would trade that pick to get an already proven second pairing defenseman. They could probably get that. They could have gone David Savard, but I think Svozil will be still a few years away. But when he comes, I think he can be a decent defenseman on Boston. Now, moving on to number 21, we have the Minnesota Wild, and I've been taking Sasha Pastujov. He's a pretty good player, and I think the Wild need more wingers. He's a winger, left wing, playing in the USCP, 52 points in 34 games, so putting up some really good numbers. I think he's pretty underrated. And Minnesota is Marco Rossi, their #1 center, Pro Kaprizov, their #1 winger, but I think Pastujov can be a solid middle 6 winger for them. Next up at 22, we have the Winnipeg Jets, and I have them taking Neil Chayka. They have to take a defenseman here no matter what. And again, like Boston, if I were them, I would try to trade this pick and get the guy like David Savard, even though he did get traded. And they should just try to get a defenseman. Better day one team that's their team that's trying to win now. And I think it's just better to get a guy who's already proven rather than taking a swing here at a guy like Chayka, who could end up being really good, but also he's still a few years away, and you never know, he could still probably be a bust. He is still a pretty good defenseman though, so I think that he's probably going to go in this like 15 to 25 range. So I think this is a pretty good pick here for Winnipeg. Next up at 23 with the Minnesota Wild with their second pick in 3 picks. So they're going to be taking Carson Kuhlman, another defenseman who is pretty solid here, like Chayka. So I think he was in my top 15, I think, in my last mock draft. So he dropped a bit, but I think that he's still a solid defenseman with a second pairing potential. Now with their second last pick, they're the Florida Panthers, and I think they're going to be taking Nikita Chybakov. He's a Russian, and he's a winger playing in SKA St. Petersburg. He's a right wing in the KHL. He's 2 points in 16 games, so nothing that pops up the roof, but still, he's in the KHL against men, so you can't expect that much. Again, like most of these guys, a few years away, but I think Florida's a really good team, and they've surprised a lot of people this year, playing really well. I don't think they're going to win the cup, but they can make a run for it in the playoffs. I wouldn't be surprised if they tried to trade away this pick, but so for now they have their pick. They're going to be taking Chybakov. And with the last pick in draft, we have the Devils with their second pick. They must be super happy picking Luke Hughes, 6th overall, but their next pick, they're going to go forward and take Isaac Rosen. He's another solid player out of Sweden. He's a left wing, right wing, playing in Leksands IF in the SHL. He only has 1 point in 22 games, but he has a both side winger flexibility. So I think that he can be a solid winger to play with Jack or Nico Hischier on New Jersey. So there is my mock draft. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please remember to leave a like and subscribe, and comment down below what you think. Who do you think is going to go first overall? But thank you for watching, and see you in the next one.